Hi, I'm Dr. Samantha Hayes, 38, and I'm about to tell you how my brother in law's condescending toast at our family reunion became the catalyst for the most satisfying professional revelation of my life. My husband Michael and I have been married for 12 years and have three children: Emma, 10, Jake, 8, and Lily, 5. For the past 8 years, I've been working as a freelance consultant while primarily focusing on raising our kids. To most of Michael's family, this makes me just a mom who doesn't really work. Michael's older brother, David, 42, is a corporate lawyer who never misses an opportunity to remind everyone about his prestigious career, his expensive suits, and his belief that stay-at-home mothers are living off their husband's success. His wife, Jennifer, works in marketing and shares David's view that women who prioritize family over career advancement are somehow lesser contributors to society. What David and the rest of Michael's family didn't know was the true nature of my little consulting work. They assumed I was doing basic administrative tasks or small local projects to keep myself busy while the kids were in school. At our annual family reunion last month, David's toast about family roles and real contributions was designed to put me in my place as the family member who had chosen domestic life over professional achievement. What David didn't know was that my business card was about to reveal exactly who he was condescending to, and that his assumptions about my professional life were about to backfire in the most public and humiliating way possible. To understand what happened at the reunion, you need to know about my career journey and how I ended up being systematically underestimated by Michael's family. I have a PhD in international business strategy from Wharton and spent my 20s working for a top-tier management consulting firm, specializing in helping Fortune 500 companies navigate complex international market expansions. I was on the partner track when Emma was born, and I made the decision to step back from the traditional corporate grind to have more flexibility with my growing family. But stepping back didn't mean stepping out. Over the past 8 years, I've built a highly specialized consulting practice focused on helping tech companies expand into emerging markets. My clients include some of the biggest names in Silicon Valley, and my rates reflect the elite level of expertise I bring to complex international business challenges. The work is intellectually demanding and financially lucrative, but it's also flexible. I can work from my home office, travel when necessary, and structure my schedule around my children's needs. It's the best of both worlds: meaningful professional work and active motherhood. However, because I work from home and because I prioritize family commitments, Michael's family has always assumed that my consulting was some sort of hobby business that generated minimal income and required minimal skill. Samantha does some computer work when the kids are at school, is how David would describe my career to his colleagues. It's nice that Michael supports her little projects. Michael, to his credit, has always understood and respected my work. He knows that my income significantly contributes to our family's financial security, and that my expertise is valued by major corporations. But he's also non-confrontational by nature, and has never corrected his family's misconceptions about my professional life. "They'll figure it out eventually," Michael would say when I complained about his family's dismissive attitude. "Your work speaks for itself." But they're not listening to my work speak. They're too busy assuming I'm playing house while you support the family. Over the years, David and Jennifer have made increasingly obvious comments about my choice to not work and my dependence on Michael's income as a software engineer. At last year's reunion, David made a joke about how lucky I was to have married someone who could afford to support a full-time wife. When I mentioned that I had client calls scheduled during our vacation, Jennifer laughed and said, "It's sweet that you call them clients. I'm sure your friends appreciate the free advice." During family dinners, when conversation turned to career challenges or professional achievements, David would often cut me out of the discussion entirely. "Let's talk about real business issues," he'd say when I tried to contribute insights about market trends or strategic planning. "Sam, how are the kids doing in school?" The most insulting incident happened 6 months ago, during Michael's birthday party. David was discussing a complex international merger his law firm was handling, and I offered some observations about regulatory challenges in emerging markets based on my recent work with a client facing similar issues. David actually laughed out loud. "Sam, that's adorable. But international business law is a bit more complex than whatever you're Googling during nap time." "David," I said calmly, "I have a PhD in international business strategy and 8 years of experience helping companies navigate exactly these types of challenges." "Sure you do," David said with a patronizing smile. "And I'm sure your clients really value your online research." Michael intervened before I could respond, but the damage was done. David had publicly dismissed my expertise in front of the entire family, and everyone had laughed along with his condescending joke. That night, I told Michael that I was done tolerating David's disrespect. The next time he condescends to me about my career, I'm going to make sure he understands exactly who he's talking to. "Sam, you don't need to prove anything to David. You know your worth." "It's not about proving my worth to David. It's about standing up for myself and stopping his public humiliation of my professional life." This year's family reunion was hosted by Michael's parents at their lake house in New Hampshire. The event included Michael's extended family, about 30 people total, including David's law firm colleagues and their spouses, who had become family friends over the years. I came prepared. In my purse was a small stack of my business cards, which I'd never had reason to share with Michael's family before. The cards were professionally designed, elegant, and contained information that would completely reframe how these people understood my professional identity. The reunion weekend started typically. David arrived in his BMW wearing expensive casual clothes that somehow still looked like a business outfit. He immediately began holding court about his latest high-profile case and his recent promotion to senior partner. "David's billing more hours than ever," Jennifer announced to anyone who would listen. "The firm is expanding their international division, and David is leading the whole operation." When people asked about my work, I gave the same vague responses I'd been giving for years. "I do some consulting work," I'd say. "It keeps me busy when the kids are at school." I was waiting for the right moment, the moment when David's condescension would be so public and obvious that my response would have maximum impact. Saturday evening, the family gathered for a formal dinner on the lake house deck. Michael's father asked David to give a toast about family and success, since David was the most professionally accomplished family member. David stood up with his wine glass, clearly pleased to be asked to speak. He began with typical platitudes about family bonds and shared values, but then his tone shifted to something more pointed. "I think it's important to recognize the different ways people contribute to family success," David said, looking around the table. "Some of us have chosen to pursue demanding careers that require sacrifice and dedication. We work long hours, travel extensively, and take on the stress of high-stakes professional challenges." He paused dramatically, clearly building to something. "Others have chosen different paths, and that's fine too. Michael's been fortunate to be able to support Samantha so she can focus on being, well, just a mom. Not everyone needs to have a demanding career. Someone has to take care of the home front." The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Several family members nodded along, apparently agreeing with his characterization of our family roles. So here's to the breadwinners who make it possible for everyone else to follow their dreams, whatever those dreams might be. David raised his glass with a smug smile, clearly pleased with his subtle but devastating putdown. The table was silent for a moment. Michael looked mortified. His parents looked uncomfortable. David's colleagues looked interested in this family dynamic they were witnessing. That's when I stood up. "Thank you for that toast, David," I said with a calm smile. "I think this is actually a perfect opportunity to clarify something about my career that seems to have been misunderstood." I reached into my purse and pulled out my business cards. I realize I've been modest about my work over the years, so I thought I'd share some information that might help everyone understand what I actually do professionally. I began handing out cards to everyone at the table, starting with David's law firm colleagues, who had been nodding along with his characterization of me as a dependent housewife. The first colleague to look at the card did a visible double-take. Dr. Samantha Hayes, Senior Partner, Global Strategy Solutions, International Market Expansion, Regulatory Compliance, Cross-Border M&A Advisory. David's confident expression began to falter. Harvard Ph.D., International Business Strategy, another guest continued reading. Fortune 500 client portfolio, specializing in emerging markets and complex regulatory environments. The table had gone completely silent, except for the sound of people examining my business card. "David," I said, still smiling, "since you mentioned breadwinners, I thought you might be interested to know that my consulting firm billed $2.3 million last year. My specialty is helping major corporations navigate exactly the kind of international business challenges you were just discussing." David was staring at my business card like it contained information in a foreign language. "In fact," I continued, "I just finished a 6-month project helping a Fortune 100 tech company structure their expansion into Southeast Asian markets. The regulatory compliance alone was worth $400,000 in consulting fees." One of David's colleagues, a senior partner at his law firm, was studying my card with obvious interest. "Global Strategy Solutions," he said. "I know that firm. You guys handled the Tesla expansion into India, didn't you?" "We did," I confirmed, along with several other high-profile market entries that required complex regulatory navigation and cultural adaptation strategies. The conversation that followed was unlike any family gathering we'd ever had. David's colleagues began asking detailed questions about my work, recognizing the name of my firm and several of my high-profile clients. "Wait," said Robert Chen, a senior partner at David's law firm. "You're the Samantha Hayes who wrote the Harvard Business Review article on regulatory arbitrage in emerging markets?" "I am," I confirmed. "That article is required reading for our international business attorneys. We reference your framework for cross-border compliance in our client presentations." David looked like he was having an out-of-body experience. His wife Jennifer was staring at my business card with obvious shock. "Samantha," said another colleague, "my firm has been looking for exactly your type of expertise for a client expansion into Latin America. Would you be interested in discussing a potential engagement?" "I'd be happy to discuss it. My firm specializes in exactly those types of market entry challenges." Michael was grinning from ear to ear, clearly enjoying watching his family discover what he'd known all along about my professional accomplishments. "David," I said, turning back to my brother-in-law, "you mentioned breadwinners. I'm curious, what did your firm bill last year?" David mumbled something about client confidentiality, but Robert Chen jumped in.
Our international division billed about $1.8 million last year, he said. Samantha, it sounds like your consulting practice is actually larger than our entire international operation. The power dynamic at the table had completely shifted. David, who had started the evening as the successful professional talking down to his dependent sister-in-law, was now sitting next to someone whose business was more successful than his own career. I have to ask, said Jennifer quietly, why did you never mention this before? I did mention it, multiple times. But whenever I tried to discuss my work, David would change the subject or make jokes about my little projects and nap time Googling. The table was silent, as everyone processed the implications of what I'd just revealed.
The rest of the evening was a complete role reversal. David's colleagues peppered me with questions about international business strategy, regulatory challenges, and market analysis. Several of them asked for my contact information for potential future projects. David himself barely spoke for the rest of the dinner. When he did contribute to conversations, it was with a humility I'd never seen from him before. "Samantha," he said during dessert, "I owe you an apology. I clearly misunderstood the scope and scale of your professional work." "David, you didn't misunderstand it. You dismissed it. Every time I tried to share information about my career, you made assumptions based on the fact that I work from home and prioritize my children." "You're right," he said quietly. "I made assumptions that were completely wrong." Michael's parents, who had always been polite but somewhat dismissive of my hobby business, were suddenly very interested in understanding my work. Michael's father, a retired engineer, began asking technical questions about market analysis and strategic planning that showed he was beginning to grasp the complexity of what I actually do. "Samantha," Michael's mother said, "I had no idea your consulting work was so substantial. We always thought you were just doing small projects to keep busy." "Mom," Michael interjected, "Sam has been trying to tell you about her work for years. You just weren't listening." The most satisfying moment came when Robert Chen handed me his business card and said, "Samantha, I'm going to recommend your firm to several of our clients who need international expansion expertise. Your credentials are exactly what they've been looking for." "I appreciate that, Robert. And David, if your firm ever needs consulting on emerging market regulatory issues, I'd be happy to help." David nodded gratefully, clearly understanding that I was offering professional collaboration rather than continuing personal conflict. Later that evening, after the extended family had gone home and the kids were asleep, David asked if he could speak with me privately. "Samantha, I need to understand something," he said. "Why didn't you ever just tell us directly about your business success? Why let us think you were just doing small projects?" "David, I did tell you directly, multiple times, but every time I mentioned my work, you either changed the subject, made jokes about my computer work, or talked over me about real business issues. But you could have been more assertive about correcting our misconceptions." "David, it wasn't my job to prove my professional worth to you. When someone consistently dismisses and belittles your expertise, eventually you stop trying to convince them to take you seriously." He was quiet for a moment. "I think I understand. I made assumptions about what work-from-home consulting looked like, and I never really listened when you tried to explain otherwise. More than that," I said, "you actively undermined my professional credibility in front of the family. You made jokes about my expertise, dismissed my insights, and consistently characterized me as someone who doesn't really work." "You're right, and I'm sorry. I think I felt threatened by the idea that you might be as successful as I am while also being a great mother. It seemed impossible, so I convinced myself it wasn't real." David's apology was more thoughtful than I'd expected, and I appreciated his willingness to examine his own biases. "David,
Being a mother and being a successful professional aren't mutually exclusive. I've built a thriving consulting practice while raising 3 children because I found a way to structure work that honors both priorities. I'm beginning to understand that. And I realize now that my toast tonight was completely inappropriate and inaccurate.
6 months later, the family dynamic has completely changed. David treats me as a professional peer and regularly asks for my insights on international business issues. His law firm has referred 2 major clients to my consulting practice, resulting in significant new revenue. More importantly, Michael's entire family now understands and respects my professional accomplishments. Family conversations include discussions of my work, and I'm no longer excluded from business-related discussions or treated as someone who doesn't really work. The most significant change has been in how my children see their mother. They've always known I work, but now they understand that my work is respected and valued by other professionals. Emma recently told her teacher that her mom helps big companies do business in other countries, and I could hear the pride in her voice. Michael has become more assertive about defending my professional reputation when necessary. Sam's not just a mom, he told his cousin at a recent family gathering. She's a mom who also happens to run a multi-million-dollar consulting firm. The business card I handed out that night has become something of a family legend. David's colleagues still mention meeting me and ask about potential collaborations. Several family friends have recommended my services to their own professional networks. But the most satisfying outcome has been the shift in how I'm perceived and treated by people who had spent years dismissing my professional life. David's toast about real contributions and just a mom revealed his assumptions about what valuable work looks like. My business card revealed the reality that mothers can be successful professionals, that work from home consulting can be highly sophisticated and lucrative, and that assumptions about other people's careers are often completely wrong. Sometimes the most powerful response to condescension isn't an argument, it's evidence. And sometimes a simple business card can change everything people thought they knew about who you are and what you've accomplished. The next time someone assumes they know what just a mom looks like, they might want to ask for her business card first. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.